an apology, but also the ANC making it clear that it is still the big player in South African politics.
So, Bikila, how many ways can you find to call me old? Yes, indeed. I thought it was very interesting to see how the ANC is dealing with this. And watching it with me, I must tell you, is Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, the writer and commentator, also the political editor of the Business Day newspaper, Hajra Omarjee, who's watched, I think, one fewer elections than me, but I'll let her answer that for herself. Hajra Omarjee, let me start with you. I mean, interesting moment there. And resonances of 2016, because what you have is, no, we're not the loser, we're still the biggest party. Didn't Jacob Zuma say that?
He did. He said the ANC would be in power until Jesus comes. Now, in African politics, you've got to have a bit of a God complex. So I think that's as much of a concession speech we are going to get. What's interesting is that I think President Ramaphosa, Helen Zille, as well as Julius Malema, should all have a smile on their face today because democracy won. South Africans have said to the three biggest parties in the country that they are not stupid, that they know that political parties and politicians do not care about governance. And that is the overwhelming message the electorate are sending. Everybody's going on about voter turnout, and it is very important because the leaders we've now elected into office are not the majority of eligible voters, but more importantly, people decided on a stay-away vote, a protest vote. That is a defiance campaign and a political statement in itself.
Interesting phrase you used, a defiance campaign in itself. I mean, given our history. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, the electorate sending out a strong message. Are the three big parties listening? Or are only the smaller parties listening? Or is worse, nobody listening?
I think there are complex messages being sent at the same time. I think what's interesting about this election is that it's been a seismic election, but the three biggest parties probably don't feel reason to congratulate. None of them does. Congratulate one another or congratulate themselves. And so we have a situation where we've had a major shift in our politics, but none of the biggest political forces are particularly happy with the outcome. And I think previously it's been a zero-sum game. But with the advent of a more decentralized, fractured political landscape, we see that we can have elections in South Africa where all the big players can perhaps not reach their ambitions. And so we're in new territory here where all the big parties are on the back foot in some way or another, and to one degree or another, and no one has necessarily bragging rights.
It's interesting. It talks to a grand coalition of forces. You're talking about three people who may or may not all be on the same medical aid plan. Well, we'll find out a bit more from Hajra Omarjee, the political editor at Business Day. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, he is an author and commentator. I don't know if he's writing a book about the election yet, but maybe by tomorrow you'll have found a publisher already, I suspect. More to come in a moment live from the Results Operations Centre. The results are fascinating, complex, interesting. There's a lot more to talk about. Local elections 2021, our coverage will continue in a moment. Welcome back. You're live with the Results Operations Centre. The ANC's been on the floor. A sort of apology, a sort of concession, if we can call it that, from Jesse Duarte. Omarjee speaking as well, the Treasurer General of the African National Congress. I should say the governing African National Congress. The question, of course, is, will that still be the case after 2024? Back now, of course, with our panelists as well. Hajra, Omarjee, the political editor at Business Day newspaper, and Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, the writer and commentator. Sizwe, if I may just come back to you. I mean, the conversation, of course, is going to be about 2024. How much stress is the ANC under now internally? There's going to be all sorts of fights, left, right, and centre. Where's it going to end? Well, we don't know.
Goodness me, how long do we have, Stephen? Because let's just take Gauteng, for example. In 2019, by the skin of its teeth, the ANC gets 12,000 votes over the line.
Yeah.
I see no scenario where the ANC can hold on to Gauteng. Action SA has come in and spoiled the party. Other parties are growing. So on that alone, we can, with quite a lot of confidence say that Gauteng is looking dicey for 2024. The Western Cape is gone. So suddenly the two major areas and the metros within them are gone. And then you have squabbles for power leading up to that. I think the ANC, and this is one thing I don't think we've done enough of, I don't think we realize just how important this election will be for the ANC's future prospects. It has never lost so much so quickly. And the ramifications, I think, we'll only begin to realize as time unfolds.
Hajra, within that as well, at the same time, there's an interesting question around how you assess how well the ANC's done, right? So we can look at the proportion of the vote. I think that is important. You can also look at how many metros do you actually have control of mayors from the ANC, right? So if the coalition negotiations end with, in fact, the ANC having control of more metros than they used to, well, President Ramaphosa can stand up and say, actually, we did quite well in this election.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned President Ramaphosa, because he's got the big decision to make in the next few days. Political parties are at their starting point, and anything is possible when you get to coalition talks. What happened in 2016 is no one could possibly have imagined that Julius Malema would go into coalition with the Democratic Alliance, and it happened. Jesse Duarte on the floor a few minutes ago did say there may be some things that are a bridge too far. Now that's important because she's referring to the DA. I think it's clear to all of us. However, the TG of the ANC, Paul Mashatile, jumped in very quickly and said, we haven't spoken to anyone. Those talks are starting tonight. And that's why I'm saying Ramaphosa has the big decision to make. If the ANC goes into coalition with the Democratic Alliance, it could improve governance in South Africa. If you look at ANC policies and if you look at DA policies, if you look at the 1994 transition, the basis is there. Yeah. However, it is a natural instinct to go with a fellow black person because you trust a fellow black person. That's why it is far more likely that the ANC will go into coalition with the EFF. What then about 2024? The answer to that is the ANC, it looks like, will drop below 50%. Who will it go into coalition with then? Then I'd put my money on the DA.
Say that again? Why?
Not now, in 2024.
No, sure, but why the EFF now and the DA then?
Well, we'll see. We have not seen the EFF are being tested on governance.
Right. Okay.
And that is where this election is important. Will the EFF help you to get into power, but what does it want in exchange?
Yes.
The DA has accused the EFF, of being rent seekers, right? Will the EFF actually govern in this election? Will it say, I'll give you Joburg in exchange for Tshwane or some other small municipality? It's clear the electorate has told all three big political parties they don't trust them on governance. So these coalition talks should be about governance.
Sizwe, I'm going to ask you more about this because, I mean, this is also the first election where we've had experience of what happens when you make a short-term decision. I'm talking about the DA in 2016, do deals with the EFF. I mean, sort of deals, informal coalitions, you know what I mean.
Sure.
And then being punished for it. And Freedom Front Plus going, well, thanks very much indeed for that. So how complicated is this now? Because, I mean, we've just seen the ANC and the EFF have a massive fight over land, where they both agree Well, okay, the EFF says they agree. Part of the ANC says they want the constitution to be changed. I've always thought their heart wasn't really in it, but that's just me. And the ANC refusing nationalization of land. And in fact, going back to the ANC's base principles on land, which is that black people should own land that is theirs, that they can give to their children and their grandchildren. This is a fundamental part, actually, of the middle-class nature of the ANC, going back really to 1912, perhaps. I mean, I realize that's a big thing to say. So now, do you give Ekurhuleni, does Julius Malema give the ANC control of Ekurhuleni, but say, now you're going to change land policy? I mean, the ANC loses even more support then in 2024, surely.
Well, I think what's interesting about that perspective, Stephen, is that there's a very big difference between winning outright and even governing, but not winning outright. And that's because the calculus changes. Whichever party puts you in that majority, even if you end up with a majority, can extract concessions eventually, and that's where we sit right now. We're moving from a place where the ANC had much more latitude and could avoid the kinds of concessions that would have to be extracted. And now, not only the EFF, but the AIC and the Patriotic Alliance in some places and the DA in other places will all have access to grind and opportunities to seize. And the ANC will have to give and maybe take where it can. And so what's fascinating for me, and I think what you're getting at here, is the way that the local speaks to the national. There's no automatic reason why a party can't come and say, well, we want to extract a national concession in response for you giving us power in a local area. And I think we are going to see the mother of all realignments, because parties have the ability to extract major concessions from the ANC now.
You're smiling. Are you looking forward to the political reporting or just tomorrow's Business Day headline?
I want 2021 to end, honestly. I do think that based on what Sizwe said, it is going to be massive in terms of coalition talks. We have learned lessons and mistakes from 2016. The approach has got to be governance, and that leadership has got